So since I haven't been in a microeconomics class for a while, Jason, you stipulated that this stack or this technology is competing with institutions of capitalism. So can you maybe elaborate a little bit what you mean with that and what this means for firms and for markets and for principal-agent relationships, and maybe just briefly explain how economists think that these institutions exist in the first place?
Yeah. So the core insight here is that what an economy is made of is some technologies and recipes for converting materials into other materials, inputs into outputs. But an economy is also made of institutions which coordinate economic actions, right? And when we think of technological change, we usually think almost entirely in terms of lasers and satellites and nanoparticles and those sorts of inputs to outputs technologies. But just as important, arguably even more important, are technologies for coordinating activity. So this is trade, coordination of trade and contracting. This is coordination of a group of people come together and need to agree about how to do a thing and then monitor that behavior and so on. These are firms, right? We then need background institutions, rules, legislation, regulation, and so on to govern all of that. And for the last, let's say 1,000 years, we've had more or less one technology for doing that, which is the humans use language and writing to trust the other humans, right? And we haven't had technological change or productivity growth in that. We've gotten sort of better or worse ones. We've got trusted or corrupt ones. We've got smarter or less smart ones. We've got business schools and so on to do that. We go through huge processes to try and select high quality people to sort of fit into those roles. But the one thing that we have never ever been able to do is automation. Automation has happened everywhere except in institutional governance. And we don't even think of that as a technology. It's just, of course you need a firm, or of course you need a government, or to do these things. And this is the shift, right? This is the nature of the shift that is happening. And it's like the shift between activity that takes place in a firm or activity that takes place in a market. And you've got transactions costs in economic language determine where that occurs. What has just shifted in 2009, and this is the new economy that we're entering into, is a world where prior to 2009 and for the previous thousands of years, all economic activity either took place in firms, in markets, or in governments, or in some combination of those three institutions for coordinating activity. Now there's four. Now there's blockchain. So this notion that some of the activity that takes place in firms will shift to blockchain. Some of the activity that takes place in government will shift to blockchain as an institution. And it's not entirely clear exactly where all those shifts are going to take place. It's not the case that this sector will move and that one won't. This will be an unbundling and a rebundling and a re-coordination. But what we basically predict is that this massively powers up how markets work. We're going to see a lot more market activity because we can track property rights and payments and so on. The cost of using markets has fallen, which means that the relative cost of using hierarchies, firms and governments, has risen. So what we'll expect to see is structural change in economies as activities are re-coordinated from using firms, governments and so on as the coordinating mechanism for organization into using blockchain technologies. What that looks like is just automation of governance, automation of coordination.